So quietly, beneath our radar, something massive is being built. Not a missile, not a trade war, not yet another headline-grabbing summit, but a new internet, a new digital infrastructure forged by the BRICS nations designed to bypass the West. In simple terms, BRICS wants to remake how data, connectivity, and influence flow around the world. This is probably the most interesting story you'll hear this year. And when it clicked for me, I couldn't look away. We've grown used to thinking the internet is global, open, universal, powered by Western tech, Western companies, Western governance. For decades, firms in Silicon Valley, data centers in Virginia, cables landing in Europe and Asia, they anchored the global web. But now, something else is stirring. According to analysts, the BRICS group is quietly constructing digital highways, cloud stacks, data platforms, and payment rails outside that Western infrastructure. Why now? Because the world of connectivity, of platforms, of data sovereignty, it's becoming a locus of power. And when you control the wires, the clouds, the nodes, you control more than just apps. You control influence. Before we talk about BRICS building a new internet, we have to understand the old one, the one the West built. For decades, the architecture of the global internet has been dominated by a handful of American and European companies. Amazon, Google, and Microsoft control more than 2/3 of the world's cloud computing market. Most of the core internet exchange points, the digital crossroads where global data meets, are located in the US and Western Europe. Even the deep-sea cables that carry over 95% of international internet traffic are largely owned, financed, or maintained by Western corporations and consortia. It's not just hardware, it's governance. The key decision-making bodies that define how the internet works, from ICANN to the Internet Engineering Task Force, were established under Western influence and remain heavily Western-staffed. So when people in the Global South talk about digital sovereignty, they're not speaking in abstract terms. They're talking about reclaiming control of a network that, in practice, runs through Western hands and Western servers. And that imbalance, technological, financial, and even linguistic, set the stage for what's coming next. BRICS Digital Rebellion. Around 2015, a new phrase began echoing through ministries and parliaments across the Global South: digital sovereignty. It meant one thing: control. Control over where data lives, who can access it, and which laws govern it. In India, that vision took the shape of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, requiring that sensitive data about Indian citizens be stored inside Indian borders. Russia followed with laws demanding that global tech platforms host their data locally, while China's 2017 cybersecurity law gave Beijing sweeping authority over all data and networks operating within its borders. Even Brazil, traditionally aligned with Western digital norms, launched a digital governance strategy to boost local cloud infrastructure and protect national data. Across the BRICS bloc, the same message was clear. Our data is our new oil, and it will no longer be pumped out for free. By the early 2020s, these isolated national moves began to converge into something more coordinated. Inside BRICS summits and meetings, ministers started talking about digital partnerships, shared clouds, shared cybersecurity frameworks, and cross-border payment rails independent of the dollar. In 2023, at the Johannesburg BRICS Summit, the joint communique explicitly called for deepened cooperation in the digital economy and artificial intelligence. The SCO Digital Forum held in Kazan in 2024 went a step further, floating proposals for a common digital trust framework among member states. What was once just a concept, digital sovereignty, was evolving into a multilateral strategy. In early 2025, Brazil quietly announced a feasibility study for a new submarine internet cable, one that would connect BRICS nations directly, bypassing traditional Western landing points. The plan echoes an earlier idea from 2012, when a BRICS cable was first proposed, stretching from Vladivostok to Cape Town, to Fortaleza, and then to Chennai. That original project was shelved by 2015. But now, amid growing geopolitical tension, the concept is back, repackaged as a feasibility study, not yet a shovel-ready build. If it materializes, it would become the first intercontinental cable system built entirely by the Global South, carrying its own data under its own terms. But the digital race isn't only about cables, it's also about software, standards, and control. BRICS members are now investing in what analysts call alternative tech stacks. In payments, that means expanding Russia's MIR system and linking it to India's RuPay and China's UnionPay, a patchwork that could one day rival Visa or MasterCard in the Global South. In cloud computing, Chinese and Indian state-backed firms are building data centers across Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East, quietly eroding the Western cloud monopoly. These are not symbolic moves. They are infrastructure shifts. And once digital plumbing changes, the flow of power changes with it. History reminds us that big dreams often face bigger obstacles. The first BRICS cable project, announced in 2012, was meant to be exactly this, a digital lifeline connecting the Global South. But funding shortfalls, political hesitation, and coordination challenges killed it by 2015. It was a warning. Building cables across oceans is as much about diplomacy as it is about engineering. What revived the dream wasn't just ambition, it was fear. The Ukraine conflict and subsequent Western sanctions revealed how quickly countries could be disconnected from the global financial and digital system. Russia's removal from SWIFT and restrictions on Western tech exports sent a clear message to other BRICS nations: dependence is vulnerability. At the same time, revelations about global surveillance programs deepened mistrust. For BRICS, the lesson was simple. The internet as it exists today is not neutral. It's an instrument of power. As of now, no BRICS Internet exists. Not yet. But the groundwork is real. Data sovereignty laws are on the books. Cooperative digital strategies have been signed. A BRICS submarine cable feasibility study is underway. And national clouds are expanding across the Global South. Piece by piece, they're building the foundations of a new network. Not by protest, but by construction. So now, the scene changes. The blueprint is laid. The policies are being passed. And now, the bricks are being placed. Imagine a scenario where the digital architecture, where the main wires and clouds don't run exclusively through Silicon Valley, Virginia, or London. Instead, you have data centers in Mumbai, São Paulo, Johannesburg, fiber links that route through the Middle East or Africa, payment gateways not anchored to the dollar system. That's not fantasy. It's emerging. In 2024-2025, the BRICS bloc formally elevated digital economy cooperation and digital infrastructure coordination to core pillars of their agenda. They explicitly referred to deepened cooperation in the digital economy and artificial intelligence. What they're building is what analysts are calling a BRICS stack, an alternative technology stack built to provide sovereign digital services, cloud, connectivity, and governance outside the traditional West-centric architecture. For example, the 2022 BRICS Digital Economy Report identified that digital infrastructure, cloud, data centers, connectivity among BRICS nations still lags the West, but also flagged the trend lines of rapid investment and South-South connectivity. At the same time, research finds that over 75% of SSL/TLS certificates used in BRICS jurisdictions were issued by US-based authorities, highlighting just how dependent many states remain on Western internet plumbing and how urgently many of them are seeking to shift it. When you combine all of this, you start to see what the shift is really about. It's not just, we'll build an alternative. It's, we'll build the rails so you can opt out of the old system. And when that option exists, everything changes. Because once data, connectivity, and settlement systems can function outside the dollar-anchored Western stack, the leverage of the Western architecture starts to erode. So the world we're moving into is one where you don't have to use the Western internet. You may choose a different stack. That's a turn. For business, for technology, for geopolitics, it means you cannot assume the same rules apply, because the rules are being rewritten. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The biggest challenge in building an alternative isn't just wires or servers. It's trust. Trust that the system works. Trust that payments settle. Trust that data flows. Trust that you can rely on it when the pressure is on. One of the ways BRICS is trying to solve that is by creating joint digital economy agendas, joint infrastructure plans, shared standards. Because infrastructure alone is not enough. You need coordination, agreement, interoperability. And that is happening. The reason the West is watching this so closely is not that one of these projects by itself is earth-shattering. It's that the accumulation of them is systemic. When you start seeing data hubs build in Johannesburg, payment rails link Brazil and India directly, and non-Western cloud stacks gain traction, you're seeing the skeleton of something new. But remember, the shift is ongoing. We're not yet at the moment where the alternative is fully parallel. The wires, rules, and rails are still under construction. What we are witnessing is the inflection point. And if you're an investor, a tech planner, or a strategist, this is the moment where you lean forward. Because once the shift passes a certain threshold, inertia takes over. And the old architecture will no longer be the default. It will be one of the architectures. So let's move next into what this means for the rest of the world. For you, for markets, for technology, and for power. For decades, the internet was marketed as the great unifier. One web, one world, one digital language. But the BRICS vision challenges that idea at its core. Critics in Washington and Brussels call it internet fragmentation, warning that a divided web could slow innovation and limit freedom of expression. Yet in Moscow, Beijing, and even Pretoria, the same trend is described in the opposite terms: digital liberation, the right of nations to control their own data, standards, and narratives. The real question isn't whether the internet is breaking apart, it's who gets to define what global means in the first place. Every cable, cloud server, and algorithm is part of a vast data supply chain, and data is now more valuable than oil. Today, more than 70% of all global data centers are located in just 10 countries, all of them Western or Western aligned. By creating alternative routes and storage hubs, BRICS nations are attempting to rewrite the geography of digital power. India and South Africa are building regional cloud facilities under Digital BRICS Task Force initiatives. Brazil has pledged billions to expand LATAM fiber corridors that connect directly to Africa and Asia, bypassing the US entirely. The implication is clear. The next economic frontier isn't just who makes chips, it's who owns the traffic. Security, though, cuts both ways. A sovereign internet can protect a country's networks from cyber attacks and surveillance, but it can also make censorship faster and more absolute. China's Great Firewall has already evolved into an AI-enhanced content filtration system, reportedly capable of real-time sentiment analysis across major platforms. Russia's SORM-3 surveillance framework links internet providers directly to state security agencies. And yet, supporters argue these same tools give governments resilience against foreign interference, the digital equivalent of nuclear deterrence. The balance between autonomy and freedom is becoming the defining paradox of the 21st century internet. The West isn't standing still. The G7 digital partnership launched in 2023 seeks to counter the BRICS digital bloc by promoting trusted supply chains and secure undersea cable routes. The U.S. has expanded its Chips and Science Act to include incentives for allied nations to host Western-controlled data centers. Meanwhile, Europe is investing over $40 billion through Gaia X, a federated cloud system designed to keep European data in European hands. The result? A silent arms race, not for weapons, but for the world's bandwidth. A decade ago, the idea of multiple internets sounded dystopian, a world divided by firewalls and ideologies. But today, it may simply reflect reality. The digital Cold War is no longer about who invented the internet, but who controls its future. In this new world, packets of data carry not just information, they carry power. And as BRICS quietly weaves its own web, one thing is certain: the next great struggle for influence won't happen on the battlefield, but in the cloud. By 2030, the internet as we know it could be unrecognizable. The International Telecommunication Union predicts that more than 80% of global online users will reside in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, regions now at the core of the BRICS digital ecosystem. The IMF's 2025 Digital Trade Outlook projects that digital exports from emerging economies will triple by the end of the decade, surpassing the combined digital output of the US and EU too. In simple terms, data gravity is shifting southward. Two internets may coexist, one anchored in Silicon Valley and Brussels, the other rooted in Shenzhen, Mumbai, São Paulo, and Moscow. Not divided by technology, but by philosophy: openness versus sovereignty, decentralization versus control. The implications go beyond economics. As BRICS platforms, apps, and payment systems expand abroad, they also export values, ideas of how digital societies should be governed. Just as Hollywood once exported American ideals through cinema, Beijing and New Delhi now export algorithms, systems of recommendation, censorship, and commerce that shape minds, not just markets. By 2030, Africa could become the decisive swing region, the place where both blocs compete for digital loyalty. Already, over 60% of Africa's 5G infrastructure is being built by Chinese firms, while India's digital payment rails are quietly integrating with African fintech hubs. The new geopolitical front isn't measured in borders or armies. It's measured in app downloads, cloud contracts, and data treaties. Every empire in history was built on control of land, of trade, of currency. The digital empire was no different, only its borders were invisible. But as BRICS nations build their own cables, clouds, and currencies, that monopoly is dissolving. The UNDP's 2030 Governance Outlook envisions a polycentric internet, where regions maintain autonomy while remaining interconnected through open protocols. The West won't disappear, nor will BRICS dominate outright. Instead, the world will enter a digital détente, an uneasy coexistence where no single power owns the web. And perhaps, in that balance, between freedom and sovereignty, chaos and order, lies the future of the human network itself.